All right. Welcome, everybody, to this CloudMaker expert talk on using Azure Sentinel for Azure and Microsoft 365. My name is Dwayne Natwick. I am a Microsoft Azure MVP and a Senior Cloud Training Architect for Opsgility and Skill Me Up. I have multiple Azure certifications, as well as I'm an MCT and a regional lead for the program. And feel free to reach out to me on any social media links provided or email if you have any questions or just want to follow what I'm doing on social media.
So first of all, also a good day from my side. My name is Matthyssen and I live in Belgium where I work as a cloud architect. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, just as Dwayne. And since July of this year, I'm awarded as a Microsoft MVP, which was a real honor for me. Like most IT professionals, and just like Dwayne, I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn. So if you ever want to reach out or just want to say hi or question related to Azure, you can always contact me through my Twitter handle and LinkedIn. So that's me in a nutshell. So Dwayne, can you now tell everybody who's following what's on the agenda for today?
Yes, I can. So today we're going to talk about the evolution of security and compliance within Azure. We'll cover what is a SIEM, what is Azure Sentinel, how does Azure Sentinel connect to data sources, how we detect anomalies utilizing the AI and cognitive services features that are tied into Azure Sentinel. And finally, we'll talk about how we monitor and investigate within Azure Sentinel. So Wim, why don't you kick us off by telling everybody about the evolution of security and compliance within Azure?
I would do that. So first of all, you could these days you can use Azure Security Center. Azure Security Center is your main stop when you need the first broad overview of your Azure environment's security posture. It provides you with a centralized view of all your Azure resources, like your IaaS VMs and their active security state. And if there's a potential to improve your overall security, Azure Security Center will give you recommendations that explain how a specific resource can be better protected. In this way, Azure Security Center helps you not only to prevent, but also to detect and respond to all kinds of security threats for any of your Azure resources. Can you click the next slide, please, Dwayne? So Security Center is offered in two modes, and it changed since Ignite last week. So first of all, you have Azure Defender off, which you can use for free for all your Azure subscriptions, and which is enabled when you visit Azure Security Center for the first time, and you open it in the Azure portal, or you can also activate it through the API. This free offering includes continuous assessments and security recommendations, and you can also use Azure Secure Score. Next to that free mode, you can also enable Azure Defender. You can set Azure Defender on, which then extends the capabilities of the free mode to workloads running in your private and other public clouds. So it enables your workloads running in your complete hybrid cloud environment. And by this, it provides security management and extra threat protection across all those hybrid workloads. And for example, you can also use Azure Just-in-Time VM Access, or JITs like they name it. Next slide, please, Dwayne.
So, Wim, real quick before we transition from this slide, this graphic here and the Defender on and off is kind of replacing the basic the free and the standard of Azure Security Center, right?
The same. Yeah, I can show it in the demo afterwards. We can do it. It's quite easy. In the beginning, you had the free and the standard tier, and now you just need to switch from off to on. That's the difference. That's it. Perfect. So, and to analyze your Azure environments and protect them from various threats, you can use Azure Secure Score from inside Azure Security Center. Secure Score reviews your security recommendations and then prioritize them for you. So you can yeah, so in that way, you as a user know which recommendations is preferable to be implemented at first. Your current secure score is based on the number of security recommendations you've already completed, and to decide which recommendations to resolve first, you should look at the severity of each one and then its potential impact on your secure score. You kind of could see secure score as your in-house security analyst, I always say. So yeah, try to use it. It's a nice way to uplift your complete security for all your Azure environments. Next slide, please, Dwayne. So next to Azure Security Center, you can also use Azure Monitor. Azure Monitor is an Azure service for collecting, analyzing, and acting on telemetry data from your cloud and on-premise environments. It helps you to understand how your applications are performing and identifies issues affecting them and the resources, all the resources they depend on. On the left side of the slide, you can see all the different functions that Azure Monitor can use to perform and to collect data. So you can collect data from applications, operating system, all your Azure resources and Azure subscriptions. And on the right side, you have all the functions you can do with it. You can gather insights, you can visualize everything, analyze it, respond to it with alerts and auto scaling. And you can also integrate it into logic apps and use it to export the APIs, for example. All data that Azure Monitor collects fits into two fundamental types. First of all, you have metrics, and secondly, you have logs. You can see metrics as numeric values that describe aspects of a system at a certain point in time. And logs store all your telemetry data, such as events and traces and performance data, so that it can be used afterwards for doing any kind of analysis you want to do on that specific data. Next slide, please, Dwayne.
Yeah, and a lot of things I think is important to know that Azure Monitor is kind of a key, and what's being done with Azure Monitor to gather information is what helps to analyze and make up that secure score in Azure Security Center. Am I correct?
Yeah. It's all data is gathered, even your Azure Advisor, for example, and Azure Service Health. It's all data that's coming in from Azure Monitor in the back. It's all telemetry data gathered by Azure Monitor, like I say. So all log data collected by Azure Monitor can be analyzed with queries. And you can create and test queries with using Log Analytics. Log Analytics is a service that helps you to collect and analyze data that's gathered by resources in your cloud or in your on-premise environments. At the center of your Log Analytics is the Log Analytics workspace, which is hosted in Azure. Log Analytics collects data in the workspace from all its connected resources. And data sources and solutions mostly have different record types, and each with its own set of properties and stuff like that. But you can still analyze all those resources and solutions together in queries in that specific workspace. So next slide, please, Dwayne. And then you have a specific option, for example, in Azure Monitor for VMs, for example. Azure Monitor for VM monitors the performance and health of your virtual machines, and also for your virtual machine scale sets, including their running processes and dependencies on other resources. It can help deliver predictable performance and availability of your application running on your VMs. And this by identifying performance bottlenecks or, for example, network issues that can interfere with your good working of your workload, for example. And it can also help you to understand whether an issue is related to any of those dependencies. And maybe by looking at them, you can easily solve the problem, for example, or uplift your VM that's working better. And a thing also to mention is that Azure Monitor for VMs is supported for Linux VMs and for Windows VMs. and it requires the VMs inside the solution in the back. So maybe Dwayne, I can show this in a demo. So
why don't you share your screen and let's take a look at what Azure Security Center and Azure Monitor for VMs looks like.
Yeah, so let me share it. Is it shared, Dwayne, for the moment, my screen? Yeah, here it is. Yeah, there it is. So if you first want to look at Security Center, since Ignite, this is looking quite different than before. So it's quite easy. If you want to work with Secure Score, you just open Security Center. Is it from the sidebar or is it through the global search bar on top of your screen? Just open it. If you open it and you're on the overview page, you already have the Secure Score tab where you can click on. You can also open the Secure Score from under your cloud security. So if you click on Secure Score, it will list all your different subscriptions you added to that specific Azure Security Center environment. If you look at, for example, my production subscription, all the secure scores, all recommendations are listed, all with specific points. So if you solve a specific recommendation, you implement it or you do a quick fix, your secure score will be uplifted with 9%, for example. So you can click open a recommendation, you can look at it. For example, I need to delete some external accounts with owner permissions that on that specific subscription. Luckily, it's a demo environment, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, you can easily follow it. It will redirect you to the right place, mostly in your Azure environment, and you can implement it. If you don't want to be shown, you can also delete it, and you can look at it. It's a lot of things you can do. Also, the things you have already implemented will be in green. So it's not the best practice to uplift your security posture to 100% in your secure score, because that's a lot of work. But really implement the most important things and try to work to those. Maybe a thing also can show. Let me close this one. Like you were saying, Dwayne, if you want to enable the Azure Defender on and off, it's quite easy. You can, under management, you can click on pricing and settings, and then you will see all your different management groups and your different subscriptions. So for example, on my production subscription, the Azure Defender plan is on, so it's already enabled. On my Dev1 subscription, for example, it's off. If I want to enable it, I can just click on it. And you can just click here, Azure Defender off, and you can select all your resources you want to apply it to, and then you enable it. I don't do it in my demo, otherwise I need to configure it afterwards. So, but it's quite easy to enable it. It's just a switch from off to on. That's it. If you look at Azure Monitor for VMs, for example, let me open my Log Analytics workspace. The first thing to do in this specific Log Analytics workspace, I have some virtual machines as data sources. You can see 1, 2, 3, and 4 of my VMs are connected to this specific workspace. So it's already connected to a Log Analytics workspace. If I now go to a specific VM, let us say for the one, I can just open it. And then under monitoring, you got the insights. You just click on it. For these ones, I already enabled it. I will show how to enable it with another VM. So it's enabled. The things you can see, it has the dependency map. So you can open all processes, look at it. You can look at the health. It's taking some time to load. You can also click on the machine properties. It's quite easy. You directly get all the IP addresses, the DNS names, physical memory, the VM type, and stuff like that. So you can also click in the Azure Vm Properties. So it's an easy way to look at all those things. It's all in. You can also click on the log events. You can see heartbeat events. You can also click on it through. It will open Azure Monitor in the back, and it shows the log analytics workspace. It will show you the queries, and it's all there. It's all configured just by one click. For example, you can also open example queries. For example, you can look for a specific resource tab. You can run all those queries, look at them up. You can look for virtual machines, for example, because we're working with virtual machines. Oh, that's a typo. So if you click on those, there are some demo queries you can run without typing the custom query language yourself. If you're not that familiar with it, you can run all those on those specific VMs and go on and go on. If you want to enable Azure Monitor for a VM, let me close this one off. For example, for this VM, I didn't enable it yet. I already showed you it was connected to my log analytics workspace in the back. Just the same thing, go to Monitor, click on Insights. You can see, just click on Enable. It will be validating and it will be initialized, and within a specific time frame it will be enabled. It will gathering all that information that you can use to really monitor this VM for specific stuff you want to follow, or you want to research, or you want to look at. So that's how easy it is. So I think, Dwayne, with this I can close my sharing. And you can go back to the slide deck, I think. Yeah. So, Dwayne, maybe you can tell us, all about SIEM, I think.
Yeah, let's talk about what a SIEM is, which is kind of an interesting topic and one that many organizations probably struggle with, and how we implement a SIEM and what is a SIEM. So a SIEM is a security information and event management system. So even though it's SIEM, the general consensus is it's pronounced SIM. So you don't phonetically put the IE sound in there. But it's utilized as a central location for logs and security events. And generally, if your organization is running a security operations center, you should have a SIEM in place, because that's really what they're going to do. They're going to monitor those specific security events, and the SIEM is what feeds those events that are coming in from logs and feeds those data sources into that environment. Some things around the benefits is it helps in your defense in depth security posture, because SIEMs can grab those security logs from, like I said, multiple data sources, from your anti-malware software to your firewall devices, from network logs and network traffic security, from identity and access management, and feeds all that into that one place where you can then hopefully decrease your vulnerabilities by identifying potential threats and remediate and decrease those attack surfaces as you go along in building your defense in depth strategy. And you can integrate, as I was saying, integrate those other controls within your environment, within your security environment, within your administrative environment, into your SIEM solution and into your SIEM system, as well as utilizing artificial intelligence, threat intelligence feeds, and extensive compliance reporting and different forensic capabilities. What that all kind of becomes as you are looking into different SIEM solutions is something that, if you aren't familiar with the implementation of a SIEM, or as an organization not familiar with how to get all those interdependencies connected, it becomes a potentially long time to implement solution, and also very expensive from a standpoint of, you probably will need to hire an outside consultant to initialize and bring in a third-party SIEM. Then you have the learning of being able to analyze and configure it properly, and have the expertise to integrate that into your environment, integrate that into your controls and your data sources, and then how you are configuring that, you may decrease its effectiveness if you aren't hiring a consultant or have the internal experts available that know how to put that all together. So that's where Azure Sentinel comes in. So I think Wim, why don't you explain what Azure Sentinel is and how we can utilize Azure Sentinel to leverage those benefits as well as take care of decreasing some of those limitations.
Yeah, we'll do that. So in the previous section, Dwayne discussed the key features of SIEM. Azure Sentinel is a cloud-native SIEM solution, which requires no infrastructure setup or maintenance, and which utilizes the power of the Azure cloud in the back. It collects data at a cloud scale, but also helps you detect previously undetected threats and minimize false positives using Microsoft Analytics. It investigates all those threats with artificial intelligence, with AI, and in this way, you're able to respond to incidents and threats more rapidly. So can you show the next slide, please, Dwayne? So like you can see on this slide, it collects data at the cloud scale across all users, devices, applications, and infrastructure. And this both from your on-premises resources, from your Azure resources, but also from all your other clouds you're using. Next slide, please, Dwayne. So Azure Sentinel integrates with the capabilities of Azure Security Center, for example, where we talked about before, to provide compliance reporting, database and service access monitoring. It also detects internal and external threats, and it can monitor your users' activities. And with cognitive services and AI engine built into Sentinel, it will use alongside with Microsoft Cyber Threat Intelligence database. So in the back, it will be also using that one. And then this way, it can provide you with real-time monitoring and analysis along with incident responses and even forensic capabilities. Next slide, please, Dwayne. So Dwayne also already discussed the limitations that may prevent an organization from implementing a SIEM solution. Azure Sentinel addresses many of these limitations and concerns. First of all, Azure Sentinel can be up and running with data sources connected within minutes. But there is also, but keep in mind that there's a limitation here with potential gaps in the external data sources. So that's a thing you should keep in mind. So it's quite important to do a good initial evaluation of Sentinel to make sure that your current controls align with the external data sources. If we look at the cost of Azure Sentinel, Azure Sentinel is a subscription-based service, and it's based on the data it ingests on a monthly base. But there is really no cost to implement it, and unless your organization is using a consultant to set it up or to deploy or manage it, or using CSP, for example. And like any other SIEM, Sentinel should be monitored and managed on a continuous basis, and this by a dedicated department or experts within a SOC. But to other SIEM implementation, it has a lower learning curve. So it's easier to work with and easier to implement. As with other Azure services, Sentinel provides also in-depth documentation. So if you're not that familiar with setting or implementing some things, you can go to the Microsoft docs. And you can find all recommendations how you properly need to configure the service, and this can really minimize the possibility of misconfigurations. Next slide, please, Dwayne. So it integrates with a lot of existing tools and data sources. It comes with a number of connectors for any kind of Microsoft solutions like Microsoft 365 Defender, Microsoft Cloud App Security, and Azure AD. Next to that, there are also a lot of building connectors from non-Microsoft solutions, like, for example, Symantec, Cisco, and Fortinet. You can even use a common event format, syslog or REST APIs to connect your data sources with Azure Sentinel. So yeah, you have a lot of sources you can use to keep better secured through Sentinel. Next slide, please, Dwayne. So you can, of course, you can also optimize Sentinel for your own needs by bringing in your own insights and threat intelligence. And because it leverages Microsoft open source community of GitHub and Juniper for playbooks and notebooks you can use. And this way you can quickly get started by just cloning and implementing those playbooks from over there. And then you also have a good base to start with. Next slide, please, Dwayne. So this diagram on this slide provides a broad visualization of what this hybrid security infrastructure may look like. At the center, you can see there's Azure Sentinel with log analytics and logic app services integrated and to analyze and automate the workflow. On the left, you can see you have AWS, CloudTrail, and other third-party services and sources that you can use. You can also use your on-premise resources and even the ones in the other data centers or in other multi-clouds. And you can also see that Azure and Microsoft, that you can use the native data sources to fit into Azure Sentinel. So I think, Dwayne, we can now show how to connect Azure Sentinel to all those data sources, I think.
Yeah, I think I was going to talk a little bit more about how that, how those data sources connect, and then we'll get into that here with within some of the prerequisites I think you were going to talk about before we got
that's maybe a good starting point if we want to set it up. So for start using Sentinel, there are a few some prerequisites you need to have in place before you can start using it. First of all, most logic one, you need an Azure subscription. You need to configure it, and you should at least have the contributor role if you want to implement it. Then also a log analytics workspace is required. You can use an existing log analytics workspace, or you can create a new one. Just keep in mind, if you're currently using Azure Security Center, you should configure Sentinel to use the same log analytics workspace, but you should definitely keep in mind that Sentinel cannot use the default workspace created by Azure Security Center. So keep that one in mind. It's an important thing.
Yeah, I think some of the data sources, you also have to have that security contributor role as well.
Yep. So that's quite important. And if you want to be able to stream audit logs from Office 365, you should also have the global admin role. Otherwise, you can't do that also. So next slide, please, Dwayne. So Azure Sentinel creates a connection to services, apps, and services by connecting to the log analytics agent or by configuring a data collection source into Sentinel. The log analytics agents, which is available for Windows and Linux, collects logs and streams them into your Sentinel workspace. Also, firewalls and proxies, along with other SIF log sources, utilizes the Linux log analytics agents on the Linux syslog server. By saying this, Dwayne, maybe it's good that you tell everyone how to connect all kinds of other data sources into Sentinel.
Yeah, that sounds good, Wim. As we saw in a lot of the diagram, the way that Sentinel is set up is to gather information from multiple sources. And on this slide, you can see here, there are a lot of data connectors just within the Azure and Microsoft 365 ecosystem. We have Azure Security Center, as we've stated. We have Azure threat protection, or the artist formerly known as Azure Threat Protection, now Azure Defender, Microsoft Defender, Azure AI, Azure Information Protection, Cloud App Security, WAF, Office 365, all of those native services within the Azure environment connect through and into Azure Sentinel and feed information that can be utilized for threat intelligence and threat monitoring and threat detection, as well as a lot of these external data sources. And we mentioned a few of them in the previous slide. One of the nice ones is if you have a multi-cloud type environment, which AWS CloudTrail can actually be fed into Azure Sentinel. So you aren't tied to just a on-premises or Azure 365 type hybrid environment. You can be utilizing other cloud providers as well as a lot of these other third-party hardware manufacturers of security hardware, such as Barracuda and Cisco and Checkpoint, to gather that information, gather that what's being gathered by them in terms of dangerous potential traffic going across your network, and then use Sentinel to create incidents, create alerts, and investigate those. So I think what we'll do now is I will pull up my environment, and we will take a look at how to connect those data sources, and specifically around Office 365, Security Center, and Cloud App Security. So I'm already in my environment now, and I'm in Azure Sentinel. But if you're just getting started, you can actually go into Azure Sentinel, and I have some workspaces, but it's very quick and easy. You create a log analytics workspace, you connect that workspace into Azure Sentinel, and you're ready to go. You're ready to start connecting data sources. So when we're talking about that time to implement, you can get Azure Sentinel up and going within just a few minutes, but then it's connecting those data sources. And the key thing around that is how are we going to connect those data sources? So I'll go into my demo environment here, and there's no data sources currently connected with this environment. So I go to the connections piece, and here are my native already in play connections. And you have 60 connectors that are already ready to go, and you can utilize those. And if, for example, if I go up here real quick just to show you, if I go into Amazon Web Services and go to this one of the things that it does really great job here within the environment is, if it's not a quick connector, if it's which we'll show real quick with the Microsoft native, if it's an external connector, there is a link right here to the Microsoft Docs page that steps you right through the process. So getting CloudTrail into the Azure Sentinel environment just takes a little bit of configuration in both of those portals. You need to put your Microsoft account into AWS and get the role and the role ARN out of AWS and put that right into here, and everything connects. So very easy to decrease that knowledge gap that might be a blocker to implementing a SIEM, because all the documentation and everything is all right at your fingertips. So let's real quick just create a couple connectors here with some data sources. We'll do Azure Sentinel. Azure Security Center here quick, and that's an easy one. You can see if you've got your license and your subscription in place, we just hit connect, and in a matter of moments, we're connected to Azure Security Center. Next one we'll do is Office 3. I'll go down and scroll down to Office 365, and we'll open that connector page. You can see here with the prerequisites, my prerequisites are green. If for some reason you don't have that tenant permission of global administrator or security administrator, it's going to put a big X there. so you know that you're not ready to connect this. But I've met both of these prerequisites, so I can connect my logs for Exchange, SharePoint, as well as Teams, apply these changes, and I've applied those changes. This will go green. This takes a little bit to go before it goes green. So let's do the next one, and then we'll come back and show how we'll have 3 connectors set up. Cloud App Security, there's a little bit of additional configuration that you're going to have to do. So let's go through that. So we'll open our connector page, and we can see I have my, again, tenant permissions are there. I have my license. So if you don't have Cloud App Security licensing enabled, you need to make sure you have that level of licensing in your Microsoft 365 tenant. And I want to connect my alerts and cloud security logs to the environment. So that is ready to go and connected. But the one thing that we have to do, and you can see, we don't have incidents that are being generated here. And there's one more little thing that has to be done. And you can see that right here in terms of connecting Cloud App Security and Azure Sentinel as a SIEM agent. So what we need to do is we go into our admin center from Microsoft 365, go to compliance, or go directly to compliance.microsoft.com and go open Cloud App Security. And when we open Cloud App Security, what we get to here is the environment, and we go up and need to create a security extension up in the gear. So in the settings gear, we click on security extensions and we go to SIEM agents. And here we don't have a SIEM agent added, but in our drop down here, you can see we have Azure Sentinel right here. I want to send all discovery logs and all alerts to my Azure Sentinel SIEM. And congratulations, we're ready to go. And if I go back now to my Sentinel environment, and we have our Cloud App Security, I can open my connector page, and I have my incidents enabled as well. And if we are looking and do a quick refresh here, we now have just that quick 3 data sources that are now connected into our Azure Sentinel SIEM and starting to gather information. So that is it for that demo. Next, let's.
So, Dwayne, maybe you can tell us how Sentinel detects those anomalies with the use of AI in cognitive services.
Yeah, yes, and that is one of the powerful parts of Azure Sentinel, is that not just is it a source where it's just filtering logs and filtering incidents, it's utilizing what Microsoft has built in terms of their threat databases, as well as the AI and cognitive services abilities within the environment. So, what is it? It's utilizing all of those things within Azure Security Center, threat intelligence, information protection, identity protection. It's taking all of those services, and then it starts to identify anomalies. And what that really does for your security operations center is it reduces that alert fatigue. Because if you're just looking and running over logs over and over again and running queries within log analytics, you have a tendency to have what's called alert fatigue, and you're becoming now you have the potential tendency to miss maybe something important, and that's what the cognitive services and machine learning in the back end helps to avoid from happening. It finds those anomalies for you while you're not looking at those logs, and can create alerts and incidents out of that. And so what kind of, some of the anomalous behaviors that it looks at in those activities are some of the things that are part of like insider risk management, and again, information protection and identity protection around your Office 365 mailboxes. what potential the cloud app administrative activity that's suspicious. That can be detected in cloud app security, but it gets pulled in once you connect those sources like we did into Azure Sentinel and reviews that information. Mass file deletion, mass file downloads. Is there a external threat or even an internal threat where this is taking on? Office 365 impersonation. So is somebody's identity been compromised? Mass file sharing. Are we sharing to a whole bunch of external resources? And then also the ransomware in cloud applications, and that and potential locations of malware and threats that are part of that overall Microsoft threat intelligence ecosystem, and what they find in terms of what might be suspicious activity outside of even just your own internal environment. And then from there, what it does is once it identifies that those anomalies, it can create then an incident that you can then investigate and use the investigation graph to view what that activity was, what hosts were being accessed, where maybe if they access that host, where did they go beyond that as well? And you have the ability then to create different playbooks and workbooks within your environment to block those suspicious IP addresses, or if you're still investigating, you can block connectivity to that IP address or virtual machine entirely right from within Azure Sentinel while you're doing your investigation.
So maybe you can show us how you can find and view those anomalies in Azure Sentinel, Dwayne?
Yeah, let's take a look at where a couple of these are, because I do have a workspace here that's been active and actually has some of that information. So if we go to this dashboard, this is a different dashboard than where we connected our data previously, because I wanted to have the data connectors have already been running in this. And you can see right when you go to this dashboard any kind of events that have taken place, and you can see that in the dashboard it's telling what those are. I have different alerts on sign-in logs, on usage, on Office activity. This is my demo environment, so yeah, I'm logging in and out a lot, and I have different accounts that I'm logging in and out of. So what's that seeing? And you can see over here, it's showing different sign-in log and usage activity that you can then just click on. And I don't have my log analytics started here. And it will run then your log analytics query in the background, and you can see where there's potential usage, where there might be a usage issue, or it runs those. And we have our Sentinel resources here, and we can then run those queries right out of here. If we feel that this particular log is something that we're worried about, we can create an alert rule right out of here from Azure Monitor, or we can feed it right into Azure Sentinel as well. So the dashboard is very powerful from that standpoint, because you get a quick look at all of that. Nothing that I've done within my environment actually has created any real incidents or alerts. They're just really events to kind of take a look at. But as your production environment continues on and on, you're going to get more of those alerts and incidents within your environment that might cause a potential threat or show a vulnerability within your environment. And all of that is how those analytics and those cognitive services then work within the background. So I think Wim, we've talked a lot about the tools to monitor, manage, and investigate. The monitoring tools and everything within there. How do we then utilize those tools to monitor, manage, and investigate within Sentinel?
Yeah. So first of all, we can use an Azure Sentinel playbook. Best is to understand what makes up such an Azure Sentinel playbook before we start using it. So you can see a playbook as automation within Azure Sentinel that initiates a workflow. This automation utilizes Azure Logic apps to carry out a workflow, and that's when a specific alert is triggered. The Logic app workflow is then used for notification and threat response to the alert being triggered. So if you go to the next slide, Dwayne, So if you look at Azure Logic Apps, so I think we're still showing the previous slide, Dwayne. Yeah, there is. So if you look at Azure Logic Apps, you can see Azure Logic App as a cloud service that has that you can use for multiple purposes within Azure. They can help you to schedule, automate, and orchestrate a number of tasks, and to start processes and workflows. Some of the examples how they can use, for example, outside of Azure Sentinels are to process and route orders between on-premises and cloud services, such as sending email notifications with Office 365 or move files to Azure storage. Within Azure Sentinel, you use Logic Apps mostly for notifications and alert triggering. So Dwayne, can you tell us how something can used with Azure Sentinel Analytics?
Yeah, sure can, Wim. So yeah, as we can see on this slide, and look at this workflow that goes into the Azure Sentinel Analytics. You can feed information and have that library of built-in detections, built-in code that can be brought in from GitHub for different playbooks and different functions that are out there and ready to be utilized. And then that analytics allows you to create the rules and detect that suspicious activity from those playbooks and what those detections are. Then those alerts are have rules that rules then get created on what threats and anomalies are important to your environment and create and what they are creating in terms of your environment, and create those alerts that then go to the people that need to do the investigation. So they can be identified by a specific group of of people, depending on what kind of alert it is. It doesn't have to go out to your entire SOC environment. If it's a network problem, it could go to your network security group. If it's an identity issue, go to the people that handle your Active Directory environment. And so it can be specific to that. And those cases then that also get created are then assigned to those people as well. So that when they come in the morning, or they get an alert, or or a shift change, they can go right to their dashboard, see what cases are in there, and then begin to investigate those cases as they go along the line, and then remediate those cases and identify what needs to take place within your environment to maybe implement a new control, or take care, or just to harden that environment a little bit more to avoid those issues, those vulnerabilities to become threats and attacks later on. So some of the key things then, and I showed this kind of quick when we were going through the last demo, is it's very easy when, as you saw within me selecting just that activity log, it sends you right into log analytics, and from there you can just select and create an alert rule from that query based on that you see that hunting query and that issue being a potential problem and a potential threat that you want to keep an eye on. And then, as I showed before as well, that the dashboard then provides that rich look. And as we saw, from this graphic versus the graphic that I showed, I had a lot more information around my sign-ins and usage activities within the environment. This particular screenshot also, you can see, has a lot of activity from AWS CloudTrail as well. So all of that goes right into that dashboard, and you can then drill down on each day, each hour, on what's going on within your environment, and then look at how to continue to manage your environment. And then, like I said, incidents and alerts are also created right out of this dashboard as well.
So maybe Dwayne, you should show us how to create a analytics alert and maybe how they can create a playbook with a logic app for investigating threats.
Yeah, let's take a quick look there. We'll go back to where we were previously, let's just take a look at the usage log here. And we can look at our usage. We can look at this particular query. Like I said, demo environment, not crazy amount of usage, but it's still showing the usage. And then we can then create our alert rule right out of Azure Sentinel, or right to Azure Sentinel out of Log Analytics. So, I can create this as a usage alert. Don't necessarily have to have a description. Tactics is a nice thing here as well, because we can look at what potentially is the issue and we can categorize it as to what we want to do. Is it a privilege escalation? Since this is usage, it's probably not. If it was sign in, it might be. We're looking, maybe let's just say, since it's usage, let's say it's a collection as well as an initial access, and set that. And we can then set the severity as well. And we can then enable that status. And then we just click next, and you can see it's got the log query within the rule query within here. If we wanted to change anything, we could do that. We can map it to specific entities. Then we look at the different incident settings. Here's where we would have our potential alert grouping and group the various alerts based on whether it's a single incident that matches or all the triggers to this rule goes into a single incident. So do we want to create an incident every time this alert takes place, or do we want to group them all in? And are we looking at some sort of historical data that we want that incident to be a part of from that standpoint? And then from there, we can then create our playbooks for having an automated response. And what we have to do that is we do have to go out and create ourselves a logic app to utilize. So very easily we can go to our logic apps and very quick and easily create a logic app in my group here. Tied to my workspace as well. A minute to validate. And once that creates, then we'll take into our logic app designer, where we can then create that rich playbook to utilize. And you can see we have different playbooks that are right in here. We can actually do a search and find under security. There's actually like some security center logs. They don't currently have any logic app or Sentinel logs, but you can make these are very similar. If something's coming in from security center, you can then create a logic app that then takes it to creates a recommendation and sends an email. And then you can connect that into your rule and then enable your environment. So I'm not going to go through all of that since we're running out of time, but that's how you can build that automation of that playbook within here. You can still create your rule within the environment without the playbook and make changes to it later on as well within the rule creation to add that playbook also once you have a playbook. So I'm not going to create that rule, but that's in just a short demo how that would be created. So Wim, you wanna just summarize what we covered here in the last hour?
Yeah, I would love to do it. So we looked at the evolution of SIEM. And we looked at the evolution of security and compliance within Azure. We talked about Azure Security Center, about Azure Monitor, how you could use your Azure Log Analytics workspace. We also looked into the traditional implementation of SIEM, and then how you can start using Azure Sentinel, how you connect your Azure Sentinel to any data sources, how you can detect anomalies with it with AI and the cognitive service in the back, and also how we can monitor and start investigation with Azure Sentinel. And just like Dwayne showed in the last demo, how to use it in combination with Logic Apps. So my name is Matthyssen.
And I'm Dwayne Natwick, and I want to thank everybody for attending this CloudMaker Expert Talk episode on Azure Sentinel and monitoring Microsoft 365 and Azure security within the environment. If anybody's interested in more of these types of expert talks, visit the Skill Me Up YouTube channel, as well as welcome you to go into and start a free trial in Skill Me Up and look at some of the additional content that we have around Azure Sentinel, Azure Security Center, as well as preparation for different Microsoft 365 as well as Azure exams. So I want to thank everybody for attending today, and have a great day.